It is time for another edition of the Fight HQ podcast as we're here to break down UFC Vegas 78, of course, which goes down here on Saturday in Las Vegas inside the UFC Apex. Of course, I am Jason Floyd. As always, I am joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Pete, happy Thursday afternoon. Appreciate Pete moving the show up a day because, I can't do the show tomorrow because I got a little broadcasting. Actually, we will not be here the next 2 Fridays, so we're going to try to do a show on Thursday again of next week as next Friday will be a travel day for me. But Pete, man, happy Thursday, man.
Happy Thursday. What's going on? What's up, everybody? Perhaps we make the permanent shift to Thursdays. We used to do Thursdays back in the day, and until Jason's schedule calms down, we'll figure it out. But happy to have you guys. Last week was a nice card. I really enjoyed last week. Another profitable week. Able to hit some of these awesome bets, some of the matchups I was worried about, you were worried about. If you had your exposures set correctly, it was okay. All I needed, Jason, I was in second place. All I needed was Corey Sandhagen to not go out there and do his best Khabib Nurmagomedov impression, and he did just that. And I ended up getting bounced out of second place. But it is what it is. It was still a profitable week. It was awesome, and here we are with an okay card. Some crazy big favorites. Not the most appealing underdog slate in my opinion, but happy to break it down with you guys and happy to be here.
Yeah, there's a couple of underdogs on the slate that I don't mind taking a sprinkle at. We'll talk about that as we do go forward. Of course, if it's the first time you're checking us out here on the Fight HQ YouTube channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button. As always, we appreciate that. Of course, if you got a question you want to send in a super chat, your questions will go to the top of the queue. Of course, also, we got our Discord channel. Totally free to join. Link is in the description below. Also, this week's DraftKings contest is live up there, so you can check it out. Also, we got our merch store as well. But as Pete, as we talk about game theory and looking down this fight card, I mean, obviously the main event, as we do the show, the prices have not come out on FanDuel. If they come out during the show, we'll talk about them. But looking at the price on DraftKings, man, the main event is just hard to avoid when you're talking about that being the 8,200, 8,000 fight this week. Also, I look at other fights. I look at the 8,300, 7,900 fight between Santos and Miller as something that I'm probably going to target. I don't love targeting the first fight at night, but Santos is really someone that I'm going to be targeting this week. And then there are these 9K options where you go, these guys could easily get 115 points. You look, we know it, Terrence McKinney. If he's going to go out there and win, he's going to win in the first round. You look at someone like a Marcus McGhee taking on JP Buys, who's stepping up to 135-pound division. And then I look at the Josh Fremd salary. I mean, he's clearly the favorite in the fight, but then I'm like, man, that is a high price point you got to pay for Josh Fremd this week.
Yeah, I'm not in love with a lot of the numbers associated with some of these fighters. The lines, I think that they should be favorites, but they've been completely overblown, or it's like, oh my gosh, if you compare cards and you go back and you compare what was a 3 or 4 to 1 favorite to this week's card, it's kind of like, a lot more uncertainty on this card and volatility, in my opinion. But I get it. I do get it, to a point. It's just like, you have to now for a DFS slate, you have to really figure out if they're able to get you 100 plus points because it's going to be necessary. And there's, the top option, Marcus McGhee, is somebody that I definitely want to talk about because of all the other uncertainties in the 9,000 option. I think that he probably provides the safest floor.
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to say we talked about this last week, maybe the week before, when we're talking about a 9,600 fighter of, okay, then who are you getting like 7,400 below? And I really look at someone like a Chris Daukaus this week is probably going to be someone that people are going to look at. Of course, we're doing this here on Thursday. The weigh-ins are not till tomorrow. I want to see what Chris Daukaus looks like on the scale coming down from heavyweight to 205. And of course, we all know Khalil Rountree wants to do here. We'll talk about McKinney and Breeden. You got Isaac Dulgarian finally making his UFC debut after being signed on Dana White's looking for a fight Jesus, I think it was about 2 years ago at this point. And, we got some other ones that are interesting as well. Hakeem Dawodu, as you mentioned, about another 9,000. That to me is a guy that, we talk about this in the fight game so often, Pete, is we never know when the downside of a fighter's career is going to happen. I mean, look, Tony Ferguson is probably the best example of this. When you look at that run he went on, and then, from 2020 to currently, it's just going downhill. And I kind of that's where I look at that co-main event. And even though it's a 9,000 option, I'm like, well, maybe this isn't going to be the time to capitalize on the downside of Cub Swanson's career.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Father Time's undefeated, and you know, gambling on mixed martial arts and fights in general, it's all about timing. And if you just, target an underdog in the correct stylistic matchup at the right time, you can end up most of the time say they're not going to win that fight. But when things align, you need to just trust your gut and go for it. It happens all the time, and I always say the best fighter doesn't always win on fight night. It's whoever's better that night. And I do think that Hakeem Dawodu is in a massive spot here, able to capitalize on an opportunity like this to really have a big, high-profile name associated with a win. It's still Cub Swanson, and I do think that he's probably going to be somewhat of a shell of himself, but Father Time is undefeated. I do feel like the best days of Cub Swanson are clearly behind him. And anytime that we're in a situation like that from a DFS standpoint, I try to get more aggressive on the favorite. So Hakeem Dawodu is going to be a guy that I'm going to prioritize also, even though I do think the fight most likely goes to the distance and Hakeem wins a decision. It's just the all the other intangibles that I brought up. It makes me want to get to more be more aggressive on Hakeem Dawodu than some of these other high 8,000, low 9,000 options.
Yeah, I mean, over at Prize Picks, that fight, the fight time is 14 minutes and 3/4. I'll tell you, when I was this morning going over at Prize Picks and looking at those props over there, I thought these lines are pretty accurate. I mean, I thought they were really spot on. There's really only two options I really look at that are the top two favorites for me. We'll talk about that as we do go forward. Of course, we're going to break these fights fight by fight. Then at the end of the show, we'll give you our straight up fight picks. We'll answer any listener questions. Also, hit on Bellator. Bellator's got a fight card coming up tomorrow night. Bellator 298. Obviously, Pete is invested in the main event. Would that be a proper way to describe this?
100%. And if you don't know, now you know that, Brennan Ward is a good friend of mine. We've trained together plenty of times and fought in the same card. I don't know how many times. So he comes down to my gym, and, it's great having him a part of the room. I really do think that he presents a difficult stylistic matchup for Logan Storley. So getting almost 3-1 plus 300, on Brennan Ward. There are some obvious concerns, of course, gas tank wise. You just haven't seen Brennan Ward get stretched out over 5 rounds since his fight against Shlemenko. He can go the distance. He's always in fantastic shape. This is a guy that is just he prepares. He puts so much work in that he goes out there and gets early finishes. But I'm telling you right now, the guy's in shape, in crazy, crazy shape, ridiculously low resting heart rate. I think clearly Storley needs to take him down and get on top, but I feel like that's going to be very difficult to do. And if he does, I don't think that he can necessarily hold him down. So I'm expecting Storley to attempt to take Brennan Ward down, of course, and then be okay with a stand-up fight for a little bit until he starts to get cracked. And then once he gets cracked, I think that it's going to be all she wrote. I think that Brennan Ward's going to knock out Logan Storley. And at plus 260, that's amazing. I can't wait for these KO props to pop open.
When I was doing my show on Tuesday morning, and we started talking about the Bellator fight card, and I looked at a betting odds, and I saw plus 260 on Brennan. I was like, I knew he was going to be the underdog. I knew he was going to be the underdog. I did not expect it to be that big of a number. I thought it'd probably be plus 180, plus 200. That's where I thought it was going to be. Because,
that's a good neighborhood for that. Yeah.
Look, I do not expect Logan to stand and trade with Brennan for very long. I do expect him to incorporate that wrestling, and we'll talk about that as we do go on. But let's get right into UFC Vegas 78, because I do got some takes on the Bellator card. There's some lines I like over there on the Bellator card. Let's get right into it. The main event, we got Rafael dos Anjos taking on the returning Vicente Luque. RDA is a minus 125 betting favorite, plus 105 for Vicente Luque, and RDA is 8,200 on DK, and for Vicente Luque, he is 8,000. Pete.
Yeah, I tell you what, if this fight had a different salary associated with it, I'd be much more inclined to fade it or be underweight to it. But because of the 8,200, 8,000 price tag, it's really difficult, right? You have 5 rounds to work with. If it doesn't go 5 rounds, that's where avoiding the fight could actually work out in your favor. Obviously, first round finishes automatically going to make it optimal. But anything besides that in round 2 or round 3 is possible that you don't need it. I just think for the most part, it's going to be difficult to get away from it. Rafael dos Anjos has a great takedown floor always. He, even at his age, he's able to go out there and impose his will in the takedown department and grappling department. Massive control time, 14 minutes, 13 minutes, 6 minutes, and 6 minutes. That was in his previous 4 matchups against Paul Felder, Renato Moicano, Rafael Fiziev, and Brian Barberena. If you go in that list, though, those 3 fighters, first 3 fighters I just listed, they're lightweights. And I do think that Rafael dos Anjos has had success at welterweight, but I do think that he's relatively undersized, muscular guy. But I just think that, his true success is going up against, fighters taking it on shorter notice. Paul Felder taking it on absolute short notice. Renato Moicano taking it on short notice. Rafael Fiziev, that was a lightweight fighter and ended up losing in the 5th round. I do think that there is a nice takedown floor for Rafael dos Anjos. There's more to his UFC resume, 21-12. Vicente Luque, a guy who has been inconsistent of late, but has a ridiculous resume as well in the welterweight division. Tons of finishes, excellent darts chokes, excellent hands, great striking, suspect takedown defense, but he does work his way back to his feet decently well. I went back and I watched the Bilal Muhammad fight, a guy who has more explosive takedowns than Rafael dos Anjos. But I do think that that's a very difficult matchup and something that Vicente Luque clearly has learned from. And that for him to go up against Jeff Neal and lose in the 3rd round via KO TKO, he has taken a ton of damage for a guy who's relatively young in the sport. So I worry. I do worry about the brain bleed. I do worry about a lot of the damage. But I am picking Vicente Luque here at 8,000 on a week where I'm not in love with a lot of the underdogs. Give me the true welterweight as an underdog who has never been an underdog in the UFC up until now.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the brain bleed, brain hemorrhage that Vicente Luque had, that's why he's been out the last year. He did have to go in front of the commission, had to go through the doctor process to be able to go through there. I mean, that to me is a little bit of concern. I mean, but one thing that Vicente Luque does have in this matchup is he's got a 6-inch reach advantage in that one. That to me is notable. Get a couple questions we got in here. T-Rex saying, can Dos Anjos constantly take him to Takedown City? Like, to me, I think that's got to be a part of the game plan here. And to me, I look at this fight, like over on Prize Picks, one of the Prize Picks props I do like this week is the under 21.5 fight time minutes, because I think this thing's going to be done within 3 rounds.
I don't hate it. I definitely don't hate it. I do think that finishes favor Vicente Luque more. I know that Rafael dos Anjos' jiu-jitsu is ridiculous. I worry about wrestlers against Vicente Luque because of his inability to defend takedowns sometimes, and he's offensive in the jiu-jitsu department, but not as skilled defensively. So I do worry about that. He has lost twice via submission. That was early on in his in his regional career. Inside the UFC, he's just lost decisions, and most recently a TKO to Jeff Neal, where he got hit with every single left hand Jeff Neal threw, whether it was an uppercut, straight left hand, whatever it was, that left hand could not miss. I think that Vicente Luque rebounds here. I think he picks up a nice win over a big, big name in Rafael dos Anjos. I think that he ends up TKOing Rafael dos Anjos. I really do. But a decision wouldn't surprise me in the least bit. So I would probably say about 3/4 of my lineup are going to have this fight. And then just 25% I'm going to get different and hope that perhaps it's a low scoring bout or that it does go the distance. Yeah, I mean, all you need is just 6 other fighters to outperform this fight, and I do think that it is possible on a 13-fight slate.
Looking over the betting side of this one, the prop bets that stuck out to me were the inside the distance props. Vicente Luque inside distance plus 165, and of course RDA inside the distance plus 275.
Yeah, I don't see either one of them submitting each other, right? Like, I know that Vicente Luque has a great darce choke. I just don't see anybody submitting Rafael dos Anjos. I just don't. And Rafael dos Anjos, I think that outside of getting the back, I don't think there's a way for him to submit Vicente Luque. So do I really believe Vicente Luque is going to TKO Rafael dos Anjos. I think it's possible. I really do think it's possible. So I like the inside the distance. It's definitely safer. But I think the KO prop is something I lean a little bit more for Vicente Luque.
Of course, if you got any questions on the fight, do leave those in the chat if you're watching us live here on YouTube. Of course, if there's a time that you cannot watch us live on YouTube, of course, if you want to listen to us on the podcasting platforms, you can do that as well. The show will probably get a little bit later on the podcasting platforms today, so I got something coming up right after the show, but be sure to check that out over there. Let's move over to the co-main event. We got Hakeem Dawodu taking on Cub Swanson. Hakeem is a minus 230 betting favorite, plus 194 Cub Swanson. Hakeem is 9,000 on DK, and for Cub, he is 7,200 on DK.
Yeah, I mean, I like Cub, right? Like I've trained with Cub, sparred Cub. I like Cub, but I don't like Cub in 2023. I did not like his response to the leg kicks from Jonathan Martinez. I've never seen that, really. I mean, like the way that he responded so terribly to inside leg kicks, outside leg kicks. I know that he's predominantly a guy that likes to throw hands, so he's a little heavier on his feet, more of a boxing stance in 2023 than he used to be. He used to be super unorthodox and throw kicks as well. Just got in love with boxing a lot, and keeping it on the feet. And I think that was a tailor-made matchup for Jonathan Martinez. And man, did Cub look terrible. Now you got Hakeem Dawodu, who wasn't successful in his fight against Julian Erosa, which it's really a head scratcher because like Erosa is one of the most difficult guys to figure out, like consistency wise. And, you had Hakeem Dawodu go out there and landed only 74 of 147 significant strikes, defended 4 takedowns. But like I expected Hakeem to go out there and put together a strong performance, similar to how he did against Michael Trizano. Landed 141 significant strikes out of 214 against Trizano. Had a little bit of control time. I just think that Hakeem Dawodu, the way he mixes it up striking-wise, as long as he chops to the legs, I think he can be successful. People tend to just throw hands when they get with Cub Swanson and kind of, stray away from the game plan. If you do that, then Cub feels comfortable, and then he can go out there and get into a rhythm. Still live to get a knockout, as he did against Darren Elkins. But most recently, we have seen Cub kind of slip up. Submission loss to Hanata Moicano. I'm not going to fault him for that. KO loss with a kick to Giga Chikadze and then leg kicks to Jonathan Martinez. The Daniel Pineda and Darren Elkins KO victories still stick out in my mind, but I just think that Hakeem's going to be the better fighter over 15 minutes, and I do expect it to go the distance. So give me Hakeem Dawodu. Not in love with the price tag, but I do think that it's all about timing, and timing in this game is the best thing. So give me Hakeem Dawodu to win a decision here at plus 200.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like Pete and you like this thing, go to decision. If you look over Prize Picks, to me, you got to look at the fight time, 14 3/4, but the other one, the 68.5 significant strikes. I think it's another interesting prop. It's not a prop that I would say I love, but I think if you were going to play that, I would probably rather go the significant strike prop than the fight time prop, just because I do expect that this is going to be a 15-minute fight. And you got to think the Dawodu camp has been looking at that previous fight going, man, leg kicks, leg kicks, leg kicks. So we'll see what happens there. Next up, we have got the light heavyweight debut of Chris Daukaus coming down from the heavyweight division as he'll be taking on Khalil Rountree Jr. Khalil Rountree is a minus 175 betting favorite, plus 150 for Chris Daukaus, and on DraftKings, Rountree is 8,900 and Daukaus is 7,300. Pete.
Yeah, I cannot trust Chris Daukaus at all. I just can't. I can't trust a guy who's been knocked out in his past 3 fights, despite it being at the heavyweight division. Now he's going to cut weight where potentially weight cuts affect your chin. And now he's going to go up in a dangerous striking matchup against Khalil Rountree, who has victories over Dustin Jacoby, Carl Roberson, Modestas Bukauskas, Eric Anders, Gokhan Saki. I'm not going to do it from a pick standpoint, but from an exposure standpoint, of course, I'm going to get to a light heavyweight Chris Daukaus at 7,300. So let me just explain how I mean that. I cannot, with any confidence, pick Chris Daukaus, but I understand that there are paths to victory for him. He has yet to attempt a takedown in the UFC. His back is clearly against the wall, and his job is on the line, in my opinion. We know that he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He should go out there and just be a well-rounded mixed martial artist. fell in love with his hands, and that's one of the most dangerous things that can happen in MMA is when a grappler or a wrestler falls in love with their hands and they get away from what brought them to the dance. Now, Chris Daukaus always threw good combinations, always enjoyed striking more than grappling. But clearly in this matchup, man, you as a coach, you need to get in Daukaus' ear and say, hey, let's initiate some grappling. Because if you do so, you can beat a Khalil Rountree. If you stay on the outside and go tit for tat with Khalil Rountree, I think Rountree's going to pick him apart and possibly finish him. This is a guy that has knocked down several people. Knocked down Carl Roberson twice, knocked down Modestas Bukauskas once, knocked down Eric Anders 4 times. And now you're going up against a guy whose durability is in question in Chris Daukaus. As far as picks go, I like Khalil Rountree at 8,900. But and I say it every week, there's volatility in certain weight classes and in certain instances, and in the light heavyweight and heavyweight weight classes, get to some of these underdogs because one shot changes everything. And Khalil Rountree is also a guy that has been relatively inconsistent throughout his career. Like, he lost a matchup to Marcin Prachnio, a guy that I do not think is good. He's picked up wins, but I just don't think he's good. So the pick is 8,900 Khalil Rountree. Exposure-wise, Chris Daukaus, in my opinion, will probably be one of the most popular underdogs in hopes that he refines his form. And I'll treat it accordingly. I think the ownership that I'm looking at right now is fine. I'd probably like a little bit more Khalil Rountree.
Yeah, the thing for me is I do want to see what does Chris Daukaus look like on the scale tomorrow. That to me is the first thing. And I do believe that over the next 6 months, we are going to see a lot of fighters switching weight classes to 205 pounds because they look at that path to getting into the top 10 as a pretty clear path. And for Daukaus, even though he has never won a fight via submission, that submission prop is a little juicy to me, plus 1,400 for Daukaus to win based via submission. But this is we talk about this a lot, is there's fighters on a fight card that you're just like, man, I don't trust them. Yeah. And I put both these guys, like you mentioned about Khalil, inconsistency. There are times you remember the Eric Anders fight? I was like, holy crap. He came out there and he looked like a guy who could contend for a title. And then you mentioned the Prachnio fight. Then you see that one, you're like, what's going on here?
Yeah. When Khalil was training in Thailand, he came over and he looked like incredible. He looked like Bangkok ready Khalil Rountree. And then next thing you know, he's going to follow up losing to Ion Cutelaba, which is fine. He's dangerous. But losing to Marcin Prachnio, every fighter's going to have ugly losses. That's a real ugly loss. That thing smells. Mm-hmm. And, if you look at Chris Daukaus, he's leaps and bounds ahead of Marcin Prachnio. So
Daukaus has to wrestle. He has to wrestle.
He can outstrike Khalil. He could, but I think that's the dumbest strategy out there. Mm-hmm. Because Khalil sometimes is just a little gun shy. But I think that he should wrestle.
You would think. Over at Prize Picks, I don't really love a lot over there. If you were going to play anything, I'd probably say more than 24.5 significant strikes on Khalil Rountree. But the fight time is 5 minutes. I don't trust the gas tank of Chris Daukaus. So that's kind of there. And the fantasy score of 103.5 on Khalil Rountree, I wouldn't touch, but I understand why you may get there. Let's do our next up. We got a female matchup. Lucindo taking on Viana. Lucindo minus 190 betting favorite, plus 160 for Viana, 8,700 for Lucindo on DK, and 7,500 for Paul Viana on DK.
Yeah, I like this fight. I really do. I think this is going to be a nice little sneaky fight to target. I'm leaning the Iasmin Lucindo side. I think that she showed great striking skill in her debut against Iasmin Jauregui. And I think most recently she looked pretty damn good against Brogan Walker, where she went to the takedown well, which, okay, she showed off that she's, versatile in all areas of mixed martial arts. I think clearly if you're backing Polyana Viana, she has the higher finishing upside of the two. She's snatched up early submission wins. She looked to have developed some power in her previous matchup against Jinyu Frey. Jinyu Frey got lit up with that combination and finished in 47 seconds. if I was going to give a path to victory for both fighters, I think that Polyana Viana's clear path is to win via submission, something Iasmin Lucindo earlier on in her regional career fell victim to, is just quick submission defeats. So as far as an underdog, I think that Polyana Viana is a fine underdog. Let me look at exposure, but I do think that, yeah, it's probably, I think that it could even be a little bit more, to be honest, just because if she wins, she's going to score well. But in my opinion, I do think that Iasmin Lucindo is going to go out there and work Polyana Viana. I think that she's going to outstrike her from the outside, stay away from danger on top, and in a pretty decisive decision win. Iasmin Lucindo is going to look pretty damn good. It's just, does she score well? I'm expecting like 88, 90 fantasy points for Iasmin Lucindo in a win. Just because I do think that Viana's game and how aggressive she is going to force the hand of Iasmin Lucindo. So give me 8,700 Iasmin Lucindo. Sneaky fight to target. Very popular for the underdog, but I do think that it's warranted as far as just quick submission wise. But yeah, give me Iasmin Lucindo. I like her here at 8,700. I think she's going to be a fighter that's going to rise up the ranks.
Yeah, I mean, you look at right now as we're looking at ownership projection, it's pretty spread out this week at this point. I mean, obviously some things will change on how projections are going to go there, but one of the things I was looking at that takedown prop of 2 for Lucindo.
Yep.
And that's one I can go either way on.
I like it, but I think it's stupid. Like if you go in the jiu-jitsu realm with Polyana Viana, like if you land in guard, very, very dangerous. Her armbar from guard, she's done it to multiple people. But if you can just if you could take her down, obviously in pass guard, that's great. But if you don't, you need to really make sure and be wise of where you're putting your hands. No hands on the mat, good posture. Do not let her control your head. Something that I do think that Iasmin Lucindo can do. So if the takedown prop's at 2, you need 3. I'd probably, if it was at 1.5, I would say, yeah, take it. But it's at 2. It's probably just a line that I wouldn't target.
No doubt about it. Let's move over. Next up, we got a matchup between Tafon and Dobson. Dobson, a plus 125 betting underdog, minus 150 for Nchukwi. Nchukwi, 8,400 DK and 7,800 for AJ Dobson.
Yeah, I mean, I like Tafon Nchukwi here, and I've liked him in a lot of his fights that he's lost. So either I'm overrating his skills or he's just kind of underperforming. He looked damn good against Azamat Murzakanov, and as a plus 164 underdog, I looked really, really smart up until he got hit with that flying knee and was finished. But he was doing well, and he was picking apart Azamat Murzakanov. And, I do think that a loss to Jung Young Park is nothing that I'm going to fault him for. It was a majority loss, majority decision defeat. And then most recently getting starched against Carlos Olberg, who's got dynamite in his hands. Can't really fault him for that. It's a volatile matchup here against AJ Dobson. Dobson, a guy who I think we've known as a KO guy, but inside the UFC, he's gone the distance twice. Once it was against Armin Petrosian, and once was against Jacob Malkoun. He's also attempted takedowns too. So I just don't know what I'm going to get from AJ Dobson. Mm-hmm. At this point, I think AJ Dobson is going to be a very, very popular underdog because of Tafon Nchukwi's damage that he's taken on his chin, where he's lost 2 fights in a row via knockout. Could easily be a third against AJ Dobson because he throws a missile of a right hand. I just think that Tafon on the outside, with his pace and his footwork and his feints, he can avoid the damage of AJ Dobson. But it might be avoiding it until he gets hit and finished. Same thing that happened against Azamat Murzakanov. So I guess I'm going to look like a fool again, but give me Tafon Nchukwi here at 8,400 to win a decision. And I do think that if he wants to incorporate a few takedowns, it'll help solidify a victory. But yeah, give me 8,400 Tafon Nchukwi, 7,800 AJ Dobson's a fine underdog, but not my favorite fight to target, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, when I was hand building my lineup for the Fight HQ contest, which, by the way, you can join that in the description below. I was looking at that fight and I was like, oh man, because when I'm looking at some of these 9,000 options, I'm like, okay, where am I going to save some salary? Dobson was somebody, and I was high on Dobson at one point, but I just wonder maybe if we do see him go a little bit of his wrestling routes here in terms of this one. Next up, we got Josh Fremd taking on Jamie Pickett. Josh Fremd is a minus 350 betting favorite, plus 275 for Jamie Pickett, 9,400 for Josh Fremd on DK, 6,800 for Jamie Pickett. And Pete, I can't tell you, I was looking at Jamie Pickett going, man, do I just do it to save salary?
Yeah, I don't hate it at all. I was almost picking Jamie Pickett, and then upon fight film and all that, I'm like, ooh, Jamie Pickett's a guy similar to Marcin Prachnio, where I just don't feel like I can say that they are true UFC caliber. Now, I like Jamie Pickett. I want him to go out there and prove me wrong. He's picked up some wins that really, really surprised me. I thought, Loriana Staropoli was better than he was. Joseph Holmes, not good. But outside of that, he's gotten worked in the UFC. Tafon Nchukwi defeat, Jordan Wright KO defeat, Kyle Daukaus submission defeat, Dennis Talulin KO defeat, most recently Bo Nickel submission defeat. So, he's fought legitimate names in competition, but he has not had success, and most of that came in, rounds 1 and 2. I will say that as far as a salary saver, stranger things have happened, and perhaps Jamie Pickett could come up with a game plan to win a decision or hurt Josh Fremd on the feet. When I saw the lines, I didn't like the number associated with Josh Fremd. 9,400 for a guy that was choked out unconscious in a guillotine to Tresean Gore. What the hell? Tresean Gore is super inconsistent as well, and it's just like on any given day, some of these weird, volatile fighters are winning fights they shouldn't or losing fights they shouldn't either. So 9,400 Josh Fremd, very powerful striker, very good sneaky grappler as well, which really surprised me that he lost, in via guillotine to Tresean Gore. But he showed off his ground game most recently against Cendricus Dumas with 2 takedowns, 2 explosive throws, tons of control time. I get it. I do get the price tag, and given the finishing nature of Jamie Pickett in his defeats, I do think that it's a solid spend-up option. But there's a guy that we'll get to in Marcus McGhee, where I just think it's much, much safer. But I'll go 9,400. I hate the price tag associated with it. I wish he was like 8,800, 8,900, and then I'd be like, okay, Josh Fremd's an excellent play this week. 9,400, you're starting to reach that. You need 100+ points all day long.
Yeah, to me, it's the price point of it. I'm like, man, Jamie Pickett's a guy I don't like backing just because of what we've seen, not just in his UFC fights, but also in his Contender Series fights. But it's just, to me, it's just a price tag. And if Josh Fremd maybe does take this fight to the ground, obviously he's not Bo Nickel, but no one's Bo Nickel. Let's be clear about it.
Right.
But I'm sure that the team there at Factory X has looked at that and said, man, we really feel like we can take this one to the mat. Then, of course, you just mentioned about Marcus McGhee taking on JP Buys. JP moving up to the bantamweight division after a run at flyweight. He's a plus 290 betting underdog, minus 370 for Marcus McGhee. Of course, came in on short notice. What was it? 3 days notice, and comes in and gets a knockout in his UFC debut. He's 9,600, and for JP, he is 6,600.
Yeah, I think Marcus McGhee is clearly the safest play on the entire slate. A guy who is a prolific finisher on the regional scene, steps up on super short notice against Journey Newson and makes us look really smart. Backed him here against Journey Newson, and as a plus 138 underdog on short notice, it goes to show the respect that the market had for Marcus McGhee. Went out there, landed 25 of 53 significant strikes, defended 6 takedowns, had a knockdown, had a submission attempt, and had a finish en route to a second-round submission win over Journey Newson, who's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So I thought that was awesome. And now he's in an extremely favorable matchup over JP Buys, who has not had any success in the UFC. Even from a number standpoint, landed only 17 of 56 significant strikes against Bruno Silva. That's terrible. 8 of 24 against Montel Jackson. 7 of 11 against Cody Durden. In his takedowns, 0 of 2 against Durden. 1 of 7 against Montel Jackson. 0 of 1 for Bruno Silva. I think that, like, as far as like snatching up submissions, he is somewhat dangerous because like he attempted 3 submissions against Montel Jackson and looked close on a couple of them. He has a very good guillotine, but like outside of that, he did nothing, and he was knocked down a ridiculous amount of times. This is a guy who's taken so much damage, and I do not think that he can absorb any strikes. Marcus McGhee is going to knock out JP Buys here, and it's just a matter of, does he do it in round 1? Does he do it in round 2 with multiple knockdowns, or round 3? I don't suspect it going past round 2. And I do think that Marcus McGhee, for me, he's going to be a guy that I want every combination of. I understand if you are going to fade it because you think that Terrence McKinney can get you equal or more points than Marcus McGhee. Okay. I understand if you think Josh Fremd can get equal or more points than Marcus McGhee. No problem. But I'm just going to take the safe floor and the safe inside the distance play in Marcus McGhee. I just don't think that JP is managing his career correctly. Taking these, I mean, Cody Durden, Montel Jackson, Bruno Silva. It seems like a desperation play to go up here and pull off a victory against Marcus McGhee. And then you take into consideration the inconsistencies with his training camps and everything. Give me Marcus McGhee all day long, 9,600, best play on the slate.
Yeah, the move up to 135 pounds is kind of an interesting one there. By the way, yeah. Samuel, appreciate your super chat talking about Pete rocking the dad beard going on. I mean, I will say this. I'm over on Instagram or TikTok, one of the two, and I'm looking at Pete. I'm like, Pete's filling out here. He's filling out this 170-pound, 155-pound body.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, of course. I told you, man. I told you. It's probably going to be 170, to be honest, at least for the first couple back. And then until, get my feet under me and then figure out. I think that the eventual move is 55, but I think 70 for just feel comfortable out there and not kill myself to get back to 55.
No doubt about it. Next up, we've got Terrence McKinney stepping up here for his second fight in a month, taking on Mike Breeden. McKinney a minus 270 betting favorite, plus 220 for Breeden. McKinney is 9,200 on DK and 7,000 for Mike Breeden.
Yeah, okay, so I'm either going to look really smart or really stupid, and I don't care either one. I just think Terrence McKinney's broken. I think he's broken, and I feel so bad because obviously I have to analyze these fights and break down these fights and back a fighter. So it's nothing personal. It's just what I'm seeing on fight film. And I just think that Terrence McKinney fights like an amateur. I've been saying it for years. He goes out there super hot out the gate, which if you go and you watch any mixed martial arts event and they have amateur fighters, round 1 is ridiculous. Always goes out there, throws balls to the wall, think that it's only a 5-minute fight. If they get a victory, okay, they get a quick finish, awesome. If not, they're gassed. And I do think that's what's happening with Terrence McKinney. And when you don't have a true UFC level camp or true UFC level fighters around you that actually are good influencers on your career and people to look up to. You need role models. You need leaders in your room. You need people to tell you the stuff you don't want to hear. You cannot be surrounded by yes men. Not saying that's the case, but all I'm saying is that if this was my guy, or if this was Saif Saud's guy, or any of these big profile camps, they would have addressed this in the training room and fixed him. And you're not going to go out there and take a fight unless you're fixing it in training camp. So I just don't know what the hell to expect from Terrence McKinney, and for him to just try to rebound and get a victory over a guy who's been preparing for an opportunity like this in Mike Breeden. I don't know if he underestimates his opponents, but like it's the same Terrence McKinney story, and it's a round 1 excellent play. So round 1 excellent play for 9,200. Terrence McKinney takedowns should be able to should be successful in the takedown department. Should be able to test the chin of Mike Breeden, who's been finished in the past. Mike Breeden is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, though, so like he will get taken down, but he'll work back to his feet, similar to how he did against Natan Levy. Outside of round 1, I think that Breeden is one of the best, if not the best, underdog on the slate, given the volatility of Terrence McKinney. McKinney goes out there, and if you're still alive in round 2 and round 3, he's shot. He's absolutely shot, and he panic taps. So if you attempt a submission on him, he's going to panic tap. If you land shots on him, his durability is in question too. And I picked Mike Breeden to beat Natan Levy. and I thought I was going to look like a genius. He landed 104 out of 210 significant strikes, was taken down like 7 or 8 times, but come round 2 and round 3, he landed takedowns of his own. He started defending 7 takedowns, and then in a loss, he scored 62 fantasy points. And Natan Levy, I think, technically is probably a better striker than Terrence McKinney. McKinney's clearly the more explosive of the two, but I think McKinney's broken. And up until he makes a significant change in his camp, in his approach to a UFC fight, I'm gonna pick against him. Until I may look stupid, I don't care. This is how I could possibly take down a tournament. And I'm seeing low ownership from Mike Breeden. I think Breeden finishes him in round 2 or 3, and we already know if it goes the distance, which Terrence McKinney never has, that it's Breeden's fight all day long. So give me Mike Breeden here at 7,000, and I'm willing to be wrong. Prove me wrong, Terrence.
Before the show, I looked at the prop bet of Mike Breeden wins round 2, and that is plus 1,200. That's a bet you might want to throw a little sprinkle on, because look, if Terrence McKinney is going to win this fight, the likely scenario is he's going to win it within 5 minutes, and I think you bring a lot of great points up there, Pete. I think the question becomes is in terms of the people who are around Terrence McKinney, whether we're talking about his management, his training partners, his coaches, of taking this fight, and he's replacing Lando Veneta, who was supposed to be in this matchup initially. That to me is kind of the question marks of, don't know how good I feel about that. And but look, obviously clear first round upside for Terrence McKinney, but if this thing gets out of the first round, how do you have faith?
Right. And maybe Terrence has all the correct people around him. Maybe it's an anxiety thing. He goes out there and it's like panic. I'm telling you, from a guy that's been there, I can see it. And early on in my career, I experienced similar stuff where it's like, you get wide-eyed and you're going out there fighting for your life. And next thing you know, if something bad happens, you don't know how to respond because you're not accustomed to it. He could have everybody around him that's doing the right thing. But as far as performance, I'm looking at a guy that is going to go out there and either shock the world or he's going to lay down as soon as he's get met with resistance. And, I think that he has all the talent in the world, but give me Mike Breeden here as an underdog.
I get you. Next up, we got Francis Marshall taking on Isaac Dulgarian. Marshall is a minus 160 betting favorite, plus 135 for Dulgarian, 8,500 for Marshall on TK, and 7,700 for Dulgarian, who's finally making his UFC debut. I will tell you, I have some insight on this one. So you remember so they did the Dana White looking for a fight and how it was presented as it was going to be a sponsorship with the Nelk Boys?
Oh, yeah, that fizzled, didn't it?
Oh, no. They were trying to manage him. And Dulgarian's manager's like, no, ain't happening. And that was what started kind of why it took so long. And then he had some injuries, and now we're finally at his UFC debut.
What a mess. What an absolute mess. I like this fight, and I do think that it's a fight pairing two talented fighters, to be honest. Francis Marshall made me look dumb last time against William Gomez. He really did. And I listened to a couple interviews, and he's like, I strayed away from the game plan, and I just tried to be a striker, and that's not what brought me to the UFC. And I was like, no shit. But hopefully he goes out there and he tries to, go back to his wrestling and grappling roots. I think that Isaac Dulgarian is a very talented fighter, more of an early finisher than anything. Not low-level competition, but middle of the pack. Francis Marshall, a guy that's more proven over 15 minutes. So there's a little uncertainty here surrounding the UFC debut of Isaac Dulgarian, how he's going to fare with the nerves of making his debut. What happens if this does touch the later rounds or goes the distance? I think that Francis Marshall, if he goes out there and uses his takedowns and his ground control and just being a complete mixed martial artist, he's a guy that can break the slate. And that's what I thought he was going to do to William Gomez, because, yes, Marcelo Rojo, he finished him via strikes, fell in love with his hands. And that's not the guy that I like, because his hands are low. They're below his chin. I see openings for Dulgarian to capitalize on. I like this fight. I'm going to lean Francis Marshall to win a decision, but Dulgarian should be one of the most heavily exposed underdogs given his finishing nature and how violent he is. But yeah, give me Francis Marshall to just be the better fighter over 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I look at Dulgarian, which kind of concerns me a little bit, is just kind of the strength of schedule on the regional scene. That's a
Yeah.
little bit of a concern with me, and I do think Marshall is definitely the way to go in this one. Then we got a heavyweight matchup: Martin Buday taking on Josh Parisian. Parisian plus 180, minus 220 for Buday. Buday 8,800 on DK and 7,400 for Parisian.
Yeah, I'm not a Josh Parisian guy. Never have been. He beat Alain Baudot and Rocky Martinez via split decision. The Alain Baudot finish, it's incorporating takedowns, taking a striker down, and ground and pounding him. It's not the most impressive thing. Martin Buday is a guy that I'm really not impressed with either, but he has victories over Jake Collier, who I actually hold in decent regard, Lukasz Bresky, and Chris Barnett, a guy that throws lots of knees in the clinch, just kind of leans against you on the cage. I think that Martin Buday here at 8,800 is in a very easy matchup against Josh Parisian. Parisian's just as funky, right? Like throws weird things from weird angles. Will probably attempt takedowns against Martin Buday and land underneath him or be pressed against the cage. And I do think that Buday is just going to beat him up, possibly, for 15 minutes or get him out of there as the fight goes. We did see Josh Parisian lose in the third round with Dantel Mays. I think that this is Martin Buday's fight, but I think it's a sloppy heavyweight bout that I'm really uninterested in rostering. If I'm going to roster anybody, it's Buday in hopes that he can smash the slate. Parisian's a guy I just don't want any part of, to be honest. I'll let my crunching device set a certain amount of Parisian, but like as far as hand builds, he's a guy I'll be skipping over.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned beginning of the show there was two lines on Prize Picks I like. This is another line of Prize Picks I like. I like the more than 56.5 significant strikes on Martin Buday. I mean, look, this is low level UFC heavyweight action, Pete.
Oh man, is it?
I mean, there's when I started looking at this fight this week, I was just like, this is the bottom end of the UFC heavyweight division, and I've never been big on Josh Parisian either. I think this is a Martin Buday fight, but looking at the ownership projections on it, I definitely want to be under the field.
Yeah, I'm going to be underweight to the number that I'm looking at right now. But I get it because as far as like safety, I think that he's a safe option. But as far as DFS score, he just hasn't shown that he's capable of putting on a tremendous score.
Next up, we got a female matchup. Jaqueline taking on Montserrat plus 205, minus 250 for Jaqueline, 9,100 on DK for Jaqueline, and 7,100 for Ruiz here. And the one thing about her is she's a one-trick pony here in the underdog.
Yeah, she is. And Montserrat Ruiz against Jaqueline Amorim, it's an interesting fight. You have a much better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner in Jaqueline Amorim, who was paired up against Sam Hughes and looked really, really good in round one. Looked like she was very close to getting the finish. And then she went out there in rounds 2 and 3 and ended up getting controlled. She attempted 10 takedowns, landed only 2 of them, had 3 submission attempts, 3 minutes of control time. But Sam Hughes just bested her in rounds 2 and rounds 3. And it showed that there's still some signs of like development that needs to happen for Jaqueline Amorim. She's a part of an excellent camp to do so, surrounded by talented fighters and American Top Team. Going to be working on her striking. Going to be working on her wrestling if she's attending any of the Steve Mako wrestling rooms. And clearly her jiu-jitsu is great to rely on. The issue here is that she's up against Montserrat Ruiz, who is going to be the better wrestler of the two. Not the better grappler. But I actually think she's going to be the better striker too. I think that Jaqueline Amorim is okay with she throws straight shots, but I'm seeing a lot of time from Montserrat Ruiz working on her boxing. I really have been diving in on her social media and everything boxing related, and I'm seeing she's looking damn good with her hands. So perhaps it's a weakness that she really wanted to develop. And most recently, losing to Amanda Lemos via KO is what'll probably, force your hand to get better at striking. I think that Montserrat Ruiz has a path to victory here. And the reason she has a path to victory is because her best technique is a broken technique. It really is. It's a head and arm throw. It's a headlock. And headlocks in women's MMA, super, super common and very, very effective. I think that it's a very effective technique. She's done it throughout her entire career. The one thing I worry about, right, is if you know you're going up against somebody who likes headlocks and somebody who just does a ton of head and arm throws, you train for that. And if you are a very, very strong Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, if you time just changing your level and sitting down a little low and lacing your leg, you can take the back. So what's going to happen is I'm going to bet this two ways. I'm going to bet Jaqueline Amorim to win via submission, and then I also think that Montserrat Ruiz, I think that she can win a decision here. I really do. And I think that her wrestling is fantastic. If you told me she went out there and she didn't attempt any headlocks and she attempted single legs and double legs and body lock takedowns, I'm picking Montserrat Ruiz because I just think that she can avoid trouble. The issue is her, those headlocks giving your back to your opponent. So I get the price tag of Jaqueline Amorim from a finishing standpoint, but I can see her just getting headlocked and then finding a submission win and then scoring only like 90 points. Whereas Montserrat Ruiz throughout 15 minutes, I think it's just going to be so damn active, probably has the better striking now in 2023 and has more takedowns to offer. So call me crazy. I'm picking Montserrat Ruiz at 7,100, but I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing for one of those headlocks to result in a submission defeat via rear naked choke. So I'll be betting the Jaqueline Amorim side just in case I'm wrong. But from DFS, I cannot avoid a floor like that for Montserrat Ruiz.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to me with Ruiz, it's about, this time away and how much has she improved on not being a one-trick pony. And wasn't this the one was this the fight where Cheyenne told her, I'll follow you home?
Yeah. Meet me in the parking lot, follow you home. You know what? Yeah. So,
one of the greatest lines in all of MMA.
If you really look at it though, Cheyenne Velismus, she's not bad. So like she was able to headlock her a lot. It's just like, as a coach, what I would say is like, hey, we got to be real careful. If you are going to do anything, you can't just be right around the head. Go for it with an underhook. If she goes for a head and arm with an underhook, I think that she's going to be fine. But anytime you're reaching around the head, if they duck right underneath that elbow, you have your back taken.
Next up, we got Damon Blackshear taking on Jose Johnson. Damon Blackshear is a minus 195 betting favorite, plus 165 for Johnson. Johnson 7,600 and 8,600 for Blackshear.
Yeah, if you guys are still listening to the show, please hit that like button. Help us get over 100 likes and over 1,000 subscribers for our YouTube channel. I like Damon Blackshear here against Jose Johnson. I think that if Damon Blackshear was in his original matchup with Brady Heistand, I would probably be going with Brady Heistand in the matchup. I do think that Damon Blackshear is an okay striker and a solid wrestler and grappler. I was very surprised because I picked Luan Lacerda to go out there and beat him, and he beat the hell out of him because Luan was just obsessed with getting a leg lock. And anytime you're committing to a leg lock, you are there to be, punched in the face. And Damon Blackshear said, okay, I'm going to punch you as many times as you're going to let me, and got a second round TKO. So scored 114, broke the slate that week, priced at 7,500. I do think that he has tremendous takedown upside here against Jose Johnson, who has been taken down multiple times on Dana White's Contender Series. And, he's a guy that is going to be a dangerous striker from the outside, sneaky submissions off of his back, but Damon Blackshear has not been submitted. So why am I thinking that Jose Johnson's going to do it? I think Damon's going to go out there, probably get reversed in certain positions as he always does. But I think he's going to win a decision here. So 8,600 is a nice price tag for a guy with a high takedown floor. But the only problem is he only scored one takedown in each of his UFC fights. So 8,600, Damon Blackshear is my pick.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fight that I was really looking at as, when you're looking at maybe getting away from some of those 9,000 options, Damon Blackshear 8,600 is a guy that I was kind of looking at, and I was kind of thinking like maybe this is the time where we see him go to that takedown city and land multiple takedowns in a matchup. Then you got your opening matchup of the night, Santos taking on Miller. Santos is a minus 150 betting favorite, plus 125 for Miller. Santos 8,300 on DK and 7,900 for Miller.
Yeah, I really like Santos here. And if you watch Juliana Miller's previous performance against Veronica Hardy, how the hell can you not like Luana Santos? Juliana Miller looked like one of the most disappointing heavy favorites we've seen in a very long time. I mean, her closing odds were almost minus 424 over Veronica Hardy, and she looked terrible out there. She looked so sloppy. She just looked, I don't know. She just looked horrible. She was, picked apart on the feet. She was reversed. She was taken down. She was controlled. She looked like somebody who had no answers and threw up 3 submission attempts in that fight, but in the end, she only scored 18 fantasy points. When she was able to get on top of Brogan Walker in the third round, she was able to finish her via TKO and scored 115 fantasy points. But she was able to land better takedowns. She was able to land four takedowns and have 9 minutes of control time. And I do think that Juliana Miller has really sneaky jiu-jitsu, but I think that Luana Santos has equally impressive jiu-jitsu, better takedown, so stronger judo, and I think that she's the better stand-up fighter. I've actually been pretty damn impressed going back and watching Luana Santos's tape. She seems pretty well-rounded for a UFC debutante. So 8,300 Luana Santos is a fighter I like, but in general, I do think that this is going to go the distance, and Luana's just going to edge her out each round. So give me 8,300 Luana Santos. Could be very, very sneaky. Maybe a lot of people aren't interested in taking a shot on a debuting fighter, but according to ownership, they like her a lot. So I can't fault them there. Give me Luana Santos to beat Juliana Miller.
I like Santos as well, and I do favor that takedown prop of 2 for Santos, going more than 2 in this matchup. So let's get right into our straight-up fight picks, non-DFS or betting related. The main event, RDA and Vicente Luque. I keep going back and forth on this one. I'm gonna lean RDA. Don't feel good about it though.
Okay, I don't blame you. I'm gonna go Vicente Luque.
I'll go Dawodu in the co-main.
Yeah, Dawodu for me.
Next.
Rountree. Are you doing it?
I want to, but my brain says you got to take Rountree, so I'll take Rountree. But
okay.
Let me just say this. I do want to see what Daukaus looks like on the scale tomorrow. That, to me, is going to be part of my thought process. As we sit here on Thursday, the pick would be Rountree. Lucindo for me.
Lucindo.
I'll go with, give me Dobson.
Ooh, okay. I don't hate it. I'll go Tafon.
I'll go Fremd. McGhee,
big time.
Oh, man. Give me Terrence, but don't feel good about it.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to go Breeden, take a shot.
I'll go Marshall. Buday. I just can't take Ruiz. Give me Jaqueline.
I'm going to take Ruiz. I'm just going to take a shot.
Give me Damon.
And
I'll go Santos,
buddy.
So let's get some questions over from Discord. First up, value plays under 8K on DraftKings. As I just kind of go down the list here, Pete, Daukaus at 7,300 I think is interesting, especially if he is able to utilize some grappling in that one. You earlier in the show you mentioned about Viana. If this fight does go to the ground and becomes a little bit of jiu-jitsu matchup. Outside of that, you mentioned about Breeden as well. You mentioned about Ruiz. I think those are kind of the ones that you really look at.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to classify this week what is value and what is a dart throw. Like, I think that clearly Montserrat Ruiz is a dart throw that I'm willing to just take advantage of. I think that Breeden is value for a guy that has had a full training camp against a struggling fighter in Terrence McKinney. And then it's like, I would say that Daukaus is a dart throw. I don't think that he's necessarily value given how much he's been finished in the past. But yeah, that's probably where I would lean. But it's kind of like blurred lines this week. I don't see like this is a valuable fighter. I think that 8,000 for Vicente Luque clearly is value in a very, very closely contested welterweight bout. But outside of that, I mean, you got volatile matchups and options that you just a lot of plus 100s that I'm willing to take shots on.
Best leverage plays. I think it's Mike Breeden.
Yeah, it's clearly Mike Breeden for me.
Best takedown upside. Is it Liana Santos?
I don't think so. I think takedown upside got to be Damon Blackshear.
Okay.
Like I think that it's Damon, and I actually think it's probably Montserrat Ruiz. Despite, I mean, you know what you're getting with her, but
Yeah.
like you also know that you could get a ridiculous amount of takedowns. I mean, against Cheyenne, she had 4 of 5 takedowns with 9 minutes of control time. So that's a lot.
Ranking the 9K options. So the 9K options, we got Dawodu, Fremd, McGhee, McKinney, and Jaqueline. Obviously, we know number one for you is going to be McGhee.
I don't like it, but I'm going to still say Fremd's 2 for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know that I'm going to go Dawodu 3.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go McKinney 4 and Amorim 5. Just because I still have to put some respect on McKinney's early finishing potential. I just, as far as like, I'm taking trustworthy candidates, McGhee and Fremd more so than, and Dawodu more so than McKinney.
Samuel with his typical questions. Favorite core plays?
McGhee might, no lie, McGhee might be in almost every single one of my lineups. It's just because, would you rather have 150 lineups with 90 plus points, or would you rather have 50 lineups with only 100 plus points from a 9,000? I'm just going to take the shot. I'm just going to take the easiest play out there. McGhee can also ragdoll JP, who's an undersized guy too. Like, I know JP's a very good wrestler, but like, McGee's not one-dimensional. If he was one-dimensional, then I can be like, he's very, very talented. We just saw him submit a black belt in Journey Newson.
Like, for me, core plays, Santos, Blackshear, and then one of the 2 guys in the main event.
Yeah, it would have to be. It's McGhee and one of the guys in the main event for me.
Yeah. Favorite inside the distance. I think I would look at it just in terms of fights. To me, I would say Rountree, Daukaus, Fremd, Pickett, McKee, Bays, McKinney, Breeden. Those would be my top ones.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't disagree with any of those.
Top punt plays. Just kind of looking at ownership and fighters who are not getting a ton of ownership. I would look at Dobson, Breeden, maybe Ruiz.
Yeah, it's going to be Breeden and Ruiz for me from a dart throw standpoint. And with dart throws, you have to be okay with being wrong. That's the whole point. It's just targeting the correct fighters. If they do come across with a win, do they score well?
By the way, so I got asked about the captain contest. The captain contest is not out yet, so we'll just kind of hypothetically talk about that. Oh God, I mean, obviously McGhee would be in that captain contest, but man, you're going to pay a crap ton of salary to put him as a captain. But then I think that's where you got to really look at, if Blackshear was in the captain contest, but he's the second fight of the night, so he's likely not in that captain contest. Outside of that, in the captain contest, you might be Rountree and Daukaus may be the fight you have to really look at. High volatility, though.
Yeah, super high volatility, but I'm with you.
Next up, let's see here. Highest odds fight to end on decision.
Oh.
Well, always look at the female matchups just because we know statistically how high they go there. Dawodu Swanson, I think, is probably one you got to look at.
Yeah. Yep. I do think that it's probably the Luana Santos and Juliana Miller fight for me.
Favorite 3-leg parlay. If I was going to put a 3-legger in, I would go McGhee, Blackshear, Santos.
I actually like that. I'm going to go McGhee, Fremd. That's 2 heavy favorites. And Blackshear.
And Sam's over-under is 5.5.
I'm gonna go over, bud.
My initial thought was over. That was my initial thought. Let me do a little countdown here. 1, 2.
It's not a bad line,
5.
but it's going to be like seven finishes.
I actually think that's a really good line. I really do. I think you're right in that 5 to maybe 8 finishes on a 13 fight card.
Mm-hmm.
But I think 5.5. I think is a really good number. I really do.
Yep. Good job, Sam.
Let's end the show here. Let's talk a little about the Bellator. Let me pull up the Bellator odds for tomorrow night. We mentioned this a little bit earlier on in the show. Talking about Brennan Ward as a plus 260 betting underdog. That's a line that really stuck out to me.
Bet him for KO too. Once that drops, bet him for KO.
Yeah, let me see if I'm just looking down here if there's any KO. They've got some round props out there, but there's not. The only thing I'm seeing here, let's see here, Ward inside the distance plus 300. I mean, I'd rather just take the plus 260.
Yeah, I think that the KO is probably going to be like plus 375.
Yeah. C. Mowry, Valentin Moldavsky. Moldavsky is a minus 230 betting fair plus a 190 for Mowry. Mowry has just he's got to fight at range. If Moldavsky is able to get that up against the fence, I think he's in trouble.
You know, I'll be honest. I always confuse Moldavsky. Who the hell is he? Which one is he? Who did he just lose to?
They are the ones he lost to himself. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say. Remember, you called the Lint Vassell upset, and I was like not expecting that. Yeah, I'm gonna go Moldavsky, man. I think Mowry will get put on his back and ground and pounded.
Ross is a minus 185 fair against Aaron Jeffrey plus 154. Jeffrey is a guy that I think if he can keep the fight on the feet, but I just don't know if he'll be able to keep the fight on the feet.
Wow, a lot of money came in on Jeffrey, huh? He started at plus 185. Now he's bet down to plus 160.
Yeah. Look, the Gallagher, I'm not huge on James Gallagher. Let me just say that. I'm not huge on him. I just think there's just the fit. Obviously, it's been a long time since we've seen James Gallagher. He was training in the United States under James Krause, no longer there, trained back in Ireland. I think this is probably a matchup for him, but I went, I don't know if I would I don't know if I would trust James Gallagher, even though I think that Bellator has probably put together the best matchup for him.
Yeah, interesting. I'm looking at the rest of the card too. Massive step up in competition for Jalon Bates to go against Enrique Barzola, huh?
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I'm going to root for my guy, Alon Cruz, fellow Tampa guy. He's a little bit of an underdog there. Look out for Jarrell Hodge, the LFA champion, making his Bellator debut. That's a straight-up pick-em fight here. And people may not know who Jordan Oliver is if you don't follow amateur wrestling. This is his pro MMA debut. He is a 14-1 betting favorite.
Is it worth putting money on the other guy?
Oof. Jordan Oliver's an amazing wrestler. So, I'm just looking at the line movements.
Wrestler as in collegiate wrestler or as in
collegiate?
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're talking WWE. I'm like, man, anytime CM Punks are around, I'm putting money on the other person.
Yeah, just looking at the biggest line movement over the last 24 hours has been on Enrique Barzola.
Mm-hmm.
So Enrique, yeah, he got as best as minus 148 back on Tuesday, and now he's at minus 205.
I'll tell you what, I'll never back Josh Hill again. Josh Hill, I don't even know the guy he's going up against, but Josh Hill, he don't even fight. He just he didn't do shit last time I bet on him.
Yeah. Jordan Oliver was a 2-time NCAA wrestling champion.
Jordan Oliver, I probably know him. I see his face.
I mean, look, that's the Bellator model right there, man. Go out there, get those collegiate wrestlers and bring them in. Of course, we'll see where Bellator's at come October 8th.
Oh, I know this kid. Yeah. I know this kid. And he's from Killcliff.
We'll see where, the uncertainty of Bellator, of where that's going to be heading here over the next couple of weeks or so. But of course, as always, we appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Be sure to hit that thumbs up here on the video. Hit that notification bell so you know when we're live right here on the channel. Of course, you can also check out the show on the podcasting platforms. We got our Discord channel, totally free to join. We got our DK contest. We got merch out there. So plenty of things, a way for you to support the channel here. Pete, anything else you want to mention before we get out of here?
No, thanks. Thank you so much for supporting us, guys. And, see you guys in the Discord with all the live bets and everybody's exposure. It'll be fun. And let's make some money.
Yeah, I'm definitely planning to be in Discord on Saturday watching these fights. So we appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of the Fight HQ podcast.